Hello. My name is Rob Morales, RCO Network, coming at you live here at Inside Production Studios in Phoenix, Arizona. We're exploring the health and healing aspects of life, what it is to be human, the emotions that we go through, and everything that makes us, us. And I'm here with my very honorable and humble co-host, Miss Mary, sometimes called Heather, VanAlstyne.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, they love you out there.
Yay.
I did screw up on that one time that I called you Heather, but
I like
but
it.
I get on auto mode. You seem like Heather seems kind of like a relaxed, maybe
Heather like a feather.
whenever
Yeah.
for whenever or for whatever weather. But like I said, me and Mary are here to talk about the emotions that we go through, not only as entrepreneurs, but as people and the things that we endure in this whole endeavor we call life. And, what a better platform than on live with all you all out there watching us talk about stuff. So one thing we were talking about just pre-show today. So if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and put them in. We love it when you hit the little love button when you see something or hear something you like. But, one of the things we were talking about as we got onto the show was, observing your own thoughts and reflection and who we are as we look into the mirror. Is that significant? Is that something we need to do as people?
Observe our thoughts.
I don't know.
Yeah, if we want to have a conscious life,
Yeah.
right, where we get to choose and we get to create and we get to take charge of our life, basically we need to be able to know what we're thinking. Otherwise, if we don't, then we're just ruled by thought, which in reaction, and we're just living a life of reaction, basically, rather than conscious choice. So my answer, yes, absolutely, we need to be mindful of what our thoughts are.
Yeah, and so much of the purpose of this show, and I think we need to articulate this out to everybody out there, is that we have, and maybe I'm speaking for both of us, maybe I'm speaking for myself, or maybe I'll speak for myself. I have struggled and been challenged with trying to discover who I am as a person, reflecting upon these thoughts. When you're alone in a room and you have nobody to talk to, or at least you think nobody's going to understand, there are other people out there that go through the same thing, and we feel so isolated. We don't want to burden and bother anybody with our own thoughts, but they're not unique to us. If we read into books, if we read into history, the things that we go through on a daily basis, somebody went through like 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, tens of thousands of years ago. I think it's our failure to really observe their behaviors and understand where they come from, because that's kind of the same places they've been and where we're at, and so again, bringing this show, what we want to do every week is to kind of have a moment with you all to say that you're not alone, and the same fears and same thoughts, the same love and the same aspirations, we can all share. And have a discussion here at RCO Network on Tuesdays with Miss Mary VanAlstyne.
Yeah, and hopefully we're able to spark some thinking with people that has them, get curious about the different topics that we're talking about, and maybe dive a little bit deeper into them and further empowering their life, where maybe they weren't inclined to pick up a book, but maybe they happened to tune in and something interesting we said allows them to go a little bit deeper. So that's kind of a little bit of an addition too.
What was really cool, like the last show we did, we got some real feedback, we got some real criticism, and it was kind of scary. I think fear led on. It's like, we upset somebody. I know I initially I didn't mean to upset anybody, but as I reflected back and you read through some of the comments in the last video, it's like, well, that's exactly what we're talking about. And I think some people get so blinded by their own emotions that they're not really able to translate effectively, and or at least have a conversation. So the last video that we did was all about being open and having a platform to talk about feelings and emotions in a very constructive way. And that person that commented, I'm not going to apologize for what we said or what we did, but I am confused as to why that person didn't step forward and want to talk with us instead of just blatantly just putting it as a comment. But I don't know. What do I know? That's what we're here to talk about.
Well, we talked on we talked on a touchy subject, I guess, to that person.
Talk about God.
And you know, and what happens is we build these egos that are attached to these ideas and beliefs that we have, and so, you know, she took our conversation as she or he, whoever it was, took our conversation as a personal attack. So they weren't really defending a religion; they were defending their being right about that religion, and so that drove them to comment in an attacking way, because to them it didn't matter what we were saying, other than they assumed that we were saying they were wrong, you know, and therefore the ego is going to jump in and defend.
And that's what I was going to bring up. I think that's very ego driven, where you become very defensive on who you've decided you're going to be. You know, is that right or wrong? No, I mean, that's not for me to judge or decide. And that was kind of the whole point of our conversation. It's like there's one person thing out there kind of telling us what to do, who to be, you know, and I think a lot of our actions are driven by our ego.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because our ego is what makes us us. It is a collection of thoughts and ideas that differentiate us or separate us from everything else, and that is, my ego is everything that makes me Mary, right? And everything that makes you Robert. That includes our thoughts and our beliefs. So whatever we decide to attach to, we make a part of us. So if someone's attacking a belief that we have, if we know, if we're saying something is a truth, like the sky is blue, and someone attacks us, it's not really, you know, unless we feel like we are being told, you know, until we attach it to, you're proving me wrong, you're trying to prove me wrong, why are you proving me wrong? There's no need for the ego to get involved there. But if we're receiving a comment or criticism or critique from someone that we feel like is a personal attack on us, it's when we relate it to ourselves. This is an attack on me. So the belief is okay, or, you know, there isn't right and wrong. Maybe there isn't a right religion or wrong religion, but it's what we attach to that we identify as ourselves that becomes the ego's definition of us. That's what draws that attack from other people.
And I think people are ego driven for survival reasons. So anything that I've disliked or found obscure in life, it has some sort of function either in the very present or in the very past. You know, when people get angry and frustrated and start yelling at you for some reason, it's not necessarily the ego as much as it is like a survival mechanism before. You know, as they were children and as they wanted a toy or food, you know, we would cry and get frustrated and upset. And then somebody or caregiver or somebody enabled that behavior and said, okay, you're crying, I'm going to feed that. I'm going to feed that part of you. And it establishes in who we are. And who we are is very much ego driven. Because we're again, as a child, defenseless, trying to be defensive in a world that's just so much against you. Everything's against you. Can't walk, can't talk, you can't eat on your own, and so much of it is just built in survival, and we just don't grow from that, unfortunately. There's a lot of people out there that are just purely angry and don't understand why, and then they blame everybody else around them for being angry all the time, but it's really something they carry.
And I really think that it boils down to, like, what are their thoughts? What are the thoughts that they're having in their head every single day that are causing these feelings and these emotions of anger? And, you know, it's when we learn to be observant of the thoughts that we're having that we really start getting this power to create and decide how we want to feel, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the whole thing. But it's so hard because we've lived this life where we basically become our thoughts. I mean, how do you even know or detach from it when you don't even realize that you're thinking? Have you ever caught yourself just going, what are the thoughts that are going through my head? What am I thinking right now? Like, have you ever just caught yourself going, wow, I've got a freight train of thoughts?
As you're talking about that, there's so many times where I'll be so caught in whatever situation's going on, whatever stress I'm feeling, whatever is going on in the present moment, and I'm driving home. And that drive home is pretty automatic. Mm-hmm. You know, you're just driving along. There's people cutting you off. And you don't really think about it. You're caught up in the moment of whatever stress you're going through, and then you miss your exit. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's when you realize, oh shit, you become very conscientious. Like, oh, here's my present moment. I just missed that exit. And that's a very, you know, simple, I guess, response to that. But I mean, very much so, we get caught up in that.
And you basically at that point become your thoughts. So how is that? How much control do you have when you become your thoughts? And then have you ever in those moments been like, what was I even thinking about? I've done that where I've
couple
gotten
times, yeah.
somewhere and I'm like, I don't even know what I was thinking about. Well, we didn't even realize that whatever thoughts we were having were causing physiological reactions, you know, they're causing emotions, and
Yeah.
we're not even aware of what those are. So we're therefore powerless to our thought, right? Our thinking.
Have you ever read Alfred Adler? Anything related to Alfred Adler?
Oh, what
He's a
is it?
psychologist. He's a
No.
contemporary of Freud. So
Okay.
Freudian theory is more about instinct, about sexual drive. Everything has some sort of emotional response. You know, we're kind of like emotional grunts. You know, you say something, I might innately respond to that. But Alfred Adler kind of takes a differential point of view. Like he gives us choice.
Mm-hmm.
He explains that everything in our life, every stress, everything is related to some sort of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And once we realize that we have control over that choice, do we have control over our emotions and everything else? Like it's a choice to be angry.
Yeah.
Well, somebody cut me off. No, well, it's a choice for you to be angry because somewhere in your past, it was very effective for you to be angry to get what you wanted. But now, because you haven't grown up from that, you haven't emotionally evolved from that, you're always going to be kind of an angry person because it effectively gets you what you want. May not be all the time, but you get it effectively enough more often than not. That's why you maintain this sense of anger.
Yeah, and I also believe once we attach to it something like anger, something happened to us, and we are not able to move on from that, we then have another angry thought, and another angry thought, and another angry thought. And then after years of that, we basically become anger, and everything that we operate from is from that one incident that happened, right? That triggered that initial emotion. And so the power really comes in when we decide that we want to take control of our thoughts and therefore take control of our reality, and how we react to everything in life.
Are you saying you don't want to be a cranky old lady?
I don't.
Mary?
No, it's no fun. I have been in the past, you know, one of the ones that was basically very victim mentality, very, you know, it wasn't, I wasn't angry, but I was more of a depressed Eeyore type, you know, and it was like, woe is me. Why is everything, you know, no, nothing works out for me. Why are people always mean to me? So it was that kind of thinking, right? Not the angry. I don't think I have it in me to be angry, to be honest.
I've never really seen that. I've never seen you upset. Every time, you know, and I think I'm very much the same way. You kind of go and just take life as it comes and goes, and it's kind of, you know, I think life is so much better that way. But again, I think anger, again, if you're very expressive in anger, there's a sense of loss of control. There's a loss of control in something you're doing, somebody you're with. Most of the time, I will say most of the time, if not 99.9% of the time, it's because it's related to somebody in your life. Stress comes from another person. Expectations.
Yeah.
If you're late for work, you're disappointing your boss. You disappoint your boss. What are the expectations there? That, well, you may lose your job if you disappoint your boss, you know? And so if you lose your job, guess what? You have no money to bring home. And all these like subconscious thoughts are like delving into you being late for work.
Yeah.
The one thing you're focusing on is anger and frustration in getting the work. But all these subconscious thoughts are what's prevailing in that mentality that you're in, that sense of frustration and anger you're in that moment, has all these sublines underneath that project that make you want to control that. Because as soon as you get to work, you're like, oh, you know, you clean up and you're like, oh yeah, I'm having a great day.
Sometimes. Or
you might be cutting off and yelling at everybody on the road, but then as soon as you get to work, you're like, oh.
Or sometimes it takes your day down the wrong path altogether, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm here with Ms. Mary VanAlstyne. We are talking about emotions, the human endeavor, and everything that it is to be human. Talking about the ego and looking into the mirror a little bit. So if you have any comments or questions, go ahead and put those in there, and we'll answer them as we go along. But I think really what this show is about is to explore these things and to share a moment with you all that you're not alone. But I definitely think with choice, if you're in a moment where you're stressed out and you feel like you have no choice in the matter, it's really because you do, and you're stuck between two choices, and you're stuck between I believe helping one person or being affected by one person as compared to somebody else. You know, take relationships for instance. Why do we stay in relationships so long?
You mean when they're not working?
Yeah.
A fear, fear of letting someone down, fear, I've heard several people that knew that they were in the wrong relationship that were literally staying because they were afraid to disappoint their friends. It was too embarrassing for them on social media to have to admit that they were, in a failed relationship. It's
or their family.
All these stories that they make up about what it's going to mean about them, Yeah, it's a
or,
fear.
or their
It's
family or their
expectation.
children,
Yeah.
how they face and what they say in front of their children. Are they gonna be the ones that the dad or the spouse blames for breaking up the family, kind of thing? There's so many things that go on a person's mind, and really at the end of the day, it's a simple choice. Do I stay with this person? Do I not stay with this person? It's a simple choice, but layered in so many different aspects of what that choice means and the reflective part of that. So again, everything boils down to survival.
Yeah.
And so if we are separating from our family, from our community, if we get the finger pointing from our parents, we're separating essentially from our community, which also means alone in the forest,
Or
alone in the desert.
It may not
fend for
be
yourself.
that. Yeah, that it may not be that, because a lot of the times we're making up stories that aren't even true about what is it gonna mean? Are they gonna disown me? Then my parents are never gonna talk to me again. And most of the time, when we make the decision and we move forward with confidence, we find that a lot of the things that we had this fear, right? Fear is just, it's fearing something that's not even true. It's, it's false evidence appearing real, right? Because they're literally just stories we don't know. So we're living in this fear of a made up story. And a lot of the times when we make the decision and we move forward, it's nowhere near as bad as we thought it was going to be. We just sit and stew in this indecision, and that's where the stress comes in.
And when I first got my divorce, I discovered my wife was somebody else, and that hit my ego pretty heavy. I was at a point in my life where I was leaving a job, and that was also hitting my ego too, because I did child welfare, and so I was just like Superman for kids, and I was leaving that, so I was essentially leaving myself there, and in my role at home was to be this husband and father. And I was separating there too, and I didn't want to let my family know. So that was the biggest part of that. So my immediate family, the family on my side of the whole situation, I kind of glossed over the fact that she was with somebody else because I didn't want them to know. Because I knew if I told them that they would feel so disappointed in her that they would chastise her. And if I ever got back together with her, they would hold it not only over her head, but they would hold it over mine, because I'm the one that's stuck in there with her. But again, that was in my head. I don't know what they were like. Honestly, after it all ended, most of them are very supportive. There were some family members that were dissenting and decided to stay on the ex's side, which they were my blood, and I kind of took offense to that. But whatever, it's people's choice. But no, you get so bogged down, and everything's just kind of going, and you have so much stress because you're in between these decisions, and you're so worried about what people will say, the community that you're in, how they will affect you at the end of the day. There's just so many layers to it. And again, simple choice. Do I stay with this person? Do I not? But also it's like a 12-layer cake underneath.
Yeah.
I can eat this slice of cake right now, but it also comes with all the, and then like, oh my God. It comes with a lot of things with it too.
Yeah.
But that's if you guys are out there, read about Adlerian theory. Talks about some of that choice making. A book that I've read is The Courage to be Disliked. I've read that probably about 4 different times, and that has helped me out in so many situations. So Alfred Adler, Adlerian theory, Courage to be Disliked is by, I forgot his name. It's a Japanese author, but it's translated to English.
Awesome.
But
I have not read that one. I'll have to read it.
Yes.
I'm assuming it has a lot to do with just loving yourself, because I think that when you love yourself, you don't worry about being liked by everybody else.
Well, that's a challenge too, because you do need your community. So part of what Adler says happiness is 3 parts: your intimate relationship,
Oh, we talked about this. Yeah.
your community,
Yeah.
and then your passion or career. So if you have essentially all those in control and all those are in a progressive and heading in the right direction, you should essentially be happy. And I've had those moments. I've had moments where I feel everything is in line, where my career, my passion is heading in the right direction. My intimate relationship is in a good spot, controllable. And then my community, I build it. I've had my moments in between, and my course of action, everything I do is directed because of that. My sense of connection to each one, which is where I'm at in life. But I feel like I have those kind of in control. So I feel mostly happy. I think it's impossible to feel happy.
I don't actually think it's impossible. I think that when
We have an opinion.
I was thinking about that, and so does that mean that we're allowing those things to define and dictate whether we're happy or not? Or is it about releasing an attachment to what you must have or what you should have in your life in order to be happy, and being able to appreciate what you have, right? It's called unattachment, right? Detaching from the outcome, detaching from expectations, be able to accept what is and surrender. I've been doing a lot of work with just surrendering to the way that things are. And I'd gone through a really rough year last year, and I actually got to a space where things were not going the way that I expected or wanted them to go. And I just continued to do this work on surrender and accepting, like, this is the reality right now. I have a choice on whether or not I want to be happy, and then just continuously choosing to be happy. I do believe you can get to that place of unattachment from that. So I'm not saying, oh gosh, well, I'm good in these two areas and this one's not great, so therefore I must not be happy, right? It's like, what are we attaching our happiness to? Is it just a state of happiness, or is it attached to having something?
What are you talking about? Conscious happiness or unconscious happiness?
Deep down inside feeling of peace and happiness.
So I call that contentment. I feel very content, but I'm not always happy.
Okay.
If you have any comments or questions about what we're talking about, go ahead and put those in the comment section below.
I think I have some questions.
Here's a tiebreaker. But do I feel that happiness can be consistent at moments? I mean, there's always going to be something. There's always going to be something in the way. I get it all the time. I'll be working on a project, I'll be working on a contract or something, and then I get disrupted by something else, by some sort of other issue, and it's always maintaining those three realms. Your intimate partner doesn't feel like you're spending enough time with them. Like, oh shit, okay, so I got to go over there. And then your community's like, hey, Robert, we got to hang out. Hey, you want to go have a beer? Hey, we're doing this thing. Hey, we're having another event this week. And you're like, I already promised I was going to go. Okay, fine, I'll go over here. And then all of a sudden, like, your work starts getting away from you. You're passionate about, like, doing these podcasts. For me is like, kind of passion, and doing these things. So as I'm addressing my community members or friends, I'm also addressing my intimate relationship. But then my passion gets kind of steered away. So it's always this constant balance, and trying to find the center of that is a challenge. And it's challenging to always feel happiness. But I think you can feel content in where you're at, in your connection with all three of those realms. But can it be consistently happy? If you have any comments or questions, go ahead and put those in the comment section. Because Mary and I would like to hear. If you have any hearts for us, just because you love us, you like looking at us, you like staring deep into our eyes. Hold on. If you like staring deep into our eyes, go ahead and leave a comment below. We welcome all of them. Anyway. But I think feeling content is really my goal. I think it's other people's goal to feel happy, but again, I think that's a fluctuating kind of sense. Because I will tell you, you'll feel happy one weekend, you spend time with your family, and then the very next moment or the night of, you're going home, and then your spouse comes in like, well, you spent more time with your family than you spent with me, and you're like, oh, well, I was happy. I thought everything was good. I thought everything was cool. But we have those moments, right? Have you experienced those?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I don't know that I think I've gotten to a space where it doesn't affect my happiness somehow. Yeah. I've just got this like inner stillness and inner peace.
Mary's always very happy.
I'm pretty happy.
She always, like, when she comes, there's just this warm kind of just resonating feeling from her. It's like this really balanced feeling. And when you see her, just like, oh, hi, it's Mary.
That's called inner peace, which I equate to happiness as well. Happiness, joy, and inner peace. And it's funny. I used to be very emotionally erratic, up, down, super happy, or super low. And that's when I think I lived more in that state. And I went on this journey of just emotional centeredness. And I used to think, when I was talking to a spiritual teacher I was working with, and she told me, your emotions are so high and so low. And I'm like, but high is so fun, And she's like, well, what if there was a possibility that you could have a bit of a peace and live more, centered emotionally? And I thought, how boring would that be? right? Because I'm not jumping up or jumping down. I'm not getting super excited about things. But then, I probably worked about 2 years to really get to this place of inner peace. And I can share some of the things I did. Happy to share. But,
Yeah.
getting to this place of emotional stillness and inner calmness, I feel joy looking out a window and happiness looking out a window and seeing a bird fly by. So it's becoming mindful and present, like we were talking about mindfulness in your thoughts, and really getting to choose, because I think that essentially what I did was I took control of that mental freight train that was happening, that was basically past programming, over and over and over, thoughts in my head, right? That led to me having this disposition of either happy or depressed, or whatever it was. And now that I have control of those thoughts, it's so refreshing that I have this inner peace and inner stillness, and the joy level has gone up all the it's not, I'm not erratic, although I can still have those moments when I'm out having fun with friends. However, I stay in a pretty neutral, I don't want to call it neutral, that sounds boring, right? That's exactly what I thought, but more centered, right? My range isn't here to here.
Well, I mean, do you ever use kind of frustration and anger to your advantage? Is there ever a position or place that you could do that?
You can absolutely use it to fuel. Yeah. I prefer to diffuse, and I prefer to be pulled by vision and inspiration versus run and pushed by a fear is kind of my thing. I've operated in that way before, of anger.
Yep.
And anger basically is just a fear. Anger is fear, right? Fear of rejection, fear of loss of control, fear of loss of power. And so to me, that anger is basically fueling you, but do I want to be fueled by that? No. I don't.
But I think the learning lesson, as we're approaching the last couple minutes of the show today, the learning lesson is offering that sense of reflection, looking into the mirror, and sometimes addressing these things that we kind of dissolve into TV and alcohol and everything else that we keep our minds busy with. But really taking that opportunity to look. For me, my biggest driving force is disappointment. I've addressed that in counseling. I've recognized it more and more within myself and my community, the people I have around me. I am so driven by disappointment, to the point where I will go out of my way to ensure things are completed. I will ensure it makes it look perfect, not necessarily for me, but for somebody else. And the compliments, not that I'm searching for one, but the compliments I get from coming into the studio is how comfortable it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm again motivated because I don't want to disappoint anybody from the way it feels, the way it looks, the conversation that we have. I'm so driven to make sure it's right in that capacity because of my connection to those community, to my intimate partners and the people I connect with. I'm driven for that. And it's always that motivating factor that pushes me, and it frustrates me, it drives me crazy, but it also pushes me to do well and in the things that I get myself involved in. And it's taken me this far, and I'm amazed at how much disappointment has given me. So I've embraced that. I don't like it all the time. I don't like staying up until 2:00 in the morning working on a project, but it's only because I feel like if I don't finish, I'll disappoint somebody. So there are moments where when you look in the mirror or kind of decipher where your emotions come from, that it does benefit you in a lot of ways. So that's my takeaway for the day. But as we're wrapping up in the last 2 minutes, Miss Mary,
wow, that was fast.
Yes, I know. Is there anything that you would like to give, the audience or anybody out there that's watching, just some feedback on reflections of the day?
So since we talked so much about being aware of our thoughts, right? We probably brought up the question of how do you even do that? And I just wanted to maybe give a little tip on that. What really got me into the habit of stepping out of being a thought into observing a thought. And it's very simple, really. It starts with a decision, right? Yeah. I want to have a little bit more control of what I'm thinking. And then what it starts with after that is a little bit of action, right? So one of the actions that I took that was very powerful for me was I set an alarm on my phone for about every 2-3 hours, because I wanted to know what I was thinking during the day. I got really curious about it. I'm like, what am I thinking all day, And so when this alarm would go off, I would almost like snap out of a trance. And then and then all of a sudden I'd go, oh, what was I thinking about? And sometimes I wouldn't even know. And so then after doing that practice for a little while, pretty soon you're like, okay, I was thinking about this. Ooh, how is that making me feel? Like maybe I'll shift my thought over here. And that's where you start to get the power over those thoughts and that monkey brain thinking that goes on in our life, right?
That visceral, innate, those
yeah,
innate thoughts.
This just cluster of nonstop thoughts, you know? And so just doing something to trigger you to remind yourself, hey, what are you thinking right now? Like that's the very first step in starting to have control over your thoughts and getting now a new choice to think something else, because really thoughts create momentum just like a snowball, right?
Yeah.
And if I have one thought that is a negative thought that's not empowering to me and I don't realize it, then that thought's just going to attract another thought, another thought, and another thought. Pretty soon I'm like, wow, I had a really bad day and I'm not sure why, you know? And so that's the first step in being able to take control on that. That would be that was my little tip of the day.
The tip of the day is writing it down, I think, is really the thing.
Yeah, reflecting on it, whether that's writing
and I would say writing is a tremendous part of reflection. I do that in poetry.
Absolutely.
I don't do it every day, which I probably should. I think your suggestion is to do it, intermittently during the day and then think about what you're doing. So
yeah, that's a non-overwhelming way to begin, and then eventually maybe you pull out your phone. We've all got phones with notepads and voice recorders, and
you have no excuse.
Reflecting on it, right? For after you start to see some patterns, like you'll start to observe some really interesting things. You'll start to see the patterns of what you think about all the time, and that's where you really gets fun. Then I'm kind of a nerd with this kind of stuff.
So if you want to reach out to Mary, her contact information, I believe we'll link, or just whatever, just message us. You can get a hold of us. But that's really the end of today's show. So I want to appreciate you, Miss Mary VanAlstyne, for coming out again every Tuesday at the 2:00 hour. We're The Inner Journey with Rob Morales, RCO Network, Mary VanAlstyne here at Studio 110. We'll catch you guys next week.